We welcome in now Michael Breed, who joins us from Sirius and all other parts that he does. One of the top teaching pros in the country, a guy we go to for a lot of the golf stuff and analysis during the year. Mike, what's going on?
How are you, Mike? Everything good with you? I'm
Yeah,
sure you're being
everything's
safe and taking
fine.
care of your family.
Yeah,
Good,
yourself, you too. I
good.
mean, it's a quiet.
Yep.
Obviously, have you been playing any golf, or are you not playing at all?
It's interesting. We were playing a little bit, and then the state of Connecticut passed this thing that they didn't want anybody out on the golf courses. That has been rescinded, and now they're letting people out there, and so hopefully we'll get a chance to get out there this weekend. But these are strange times, no doubt about it.
What are you hearing? What do you think the idea is? What are you hearing on the inside about what they want to do? They're going to play the majors this year sometime. I mean, I don't think there's any question. They're going to spread them out. They're going to play them. They're going to probably sit down and try to work out a schedule with the PGA when they do come back, whenever it is, July, June, whenever. What do you think happens with the majors this year?
Mike, I think we're in a very interesting time. I think this is one of those times, and you'll understand this completely, where all these different events are being postponed into the fall. And we start thinking about not just golf majors, but tennis majors. You start thinking about horse racing. You start thinking about football, both college and professional. You start thinking about baseball, and everything being pushed off into a very small window. And then you start thinking about how you're going to try to get these on the air with all the requests of cameras and cameramen and everything that you know clearly,
Yep.
The behind-the-scenes stuff. And what I can tell you is that who knows I really couldn't tell you what's going to happen, because you now start having to prioritize things, right? And so is the priority, we want to show the Patriots' first game over showing, Wimbledon or showing
No question. Well,
whatever.
I think it basically it's the survival of the strongest, like it is in every other walk of life. When the Masters wants to go, it goes. When Wimbledon wants to go, it goes. Now those guys will. I know that everybody. The power guys. The Derby has already tried to stake out the Saturday of Labor Day weekend. Okay, there's been talk of the Masters staking out the same weekend. That was going to be incredible prime time. That's before NFL starts, and that's going to be a huge weekend to be on the air. And if everything's back to not normal, but at least we're rolling along by then, that's going to be an enormous weekend. And you could see the big guys involved there. You could see a weekend where the Derby was Saturday and the Masters finale was Monday. I mean, what kind of weekend is that? How crazy would that be, huh?
It's an amazing thing. But the other thing that I think about is, you only have so many camera operators, and you only have so many. And so when you start thinking about this, are they going to be able to cover football or baseball? Who knows what's going to happen with that? With all the different cameramen and cameras that are required in all these sporting events, I just don't think that you can do it all.
Well, you see, golf has its own entity. The golf and NFL are completely separate. They have their own, in a network level, they have their own crews, their own technicians, their own people. They do golf. Very few of them do golf and football. The golf guys are pretty much their own guys. And so they're there, a lot of them. And the first weeks of the football, I could see the NFL maybe sliding 1 week to start the season 1 week later, which moves them into February, which they like anyway. And that could be something they have for the future, which is something they've always wanted to do anyway, is play the Super Bowl on President's Weekend and give everybody a little more time to get events in. But what you said first is true. We are going to see an enormous number of monster events sandwiched into a very short amount of time on the calendar, especially August and September. You're going to want to get your event up before the NFL starts, because the NFL still is too big for everybody else. Now, not that the Masters couldn't handle its own. It could. But the point is, they're going to want to go before before it starts. What I wondered from you is, how much cooperation do you think there are among the ruling bodies in golf to work with the PGA, to work with the people who want to stage the FedEx Cup, to work with the Royal and Ancient over there, to work with all the groups? How much will they play nice in golf?
Well, the question is, will there be a FedEx Cup? I mean, quite frankly, who knows when this season is going to start?
Right.
You're already seeing some. There's conversation that the Open Championship is going to get canceled or possibly postponed, or who knows what is happening there. But that's a good ways down the line. And if the Open Championship were to get canceled, that's a completely different scenario than if it gets postponed. So you sit there and you start to look at all this, and it's literally an extreme challenge.
Do you think these majors will be played this year right now? I mean, let's say a realistic conclusion, which we all don't know yet, but let's say we're back to having American life by June 1st. Do you think if that's the case, we'll play all 4 majors this year?
I think one of the big things that will help that happening is the cancellation of the Olympics. If you look at the schedule that the PGA Tour has, and they've got a couple of windows in here, but you start looking at this and you start going, okay, well, the Olympics was supposed to take place the latter part of July, the first part of August. And now if we are up and running, there's a window right there. Could you put the U.S. Open in that window? Could you put Augusta National? And the golf course is closed, right? So now you start thinking about, well, Augusta National opens up in the middle of October. Are they going to open up early so they can play that?
Yes.
What's going to end up happening with the PGA Championship? It's entirely possible that you go a week of a major, and then next week they have an event, and then another week. I mean, you could play 3 majors in a month and a half, and that's a complete possibility. It's such a mind-boggling situation that we're in that it is impossible to know this. But what my guess in all this is, I'm looking at a PGA Tour schedule right now that's canceled or postponed up until the middle of May with the PGA Championship. Are they going to play the Charles Schwab Cup in Texas? What's going to happen in the other parts of our country? Let me give you an idea of what's going on. Down in Palm Beach, they've closed courses down there because a lot of the New Yorkers, which is really the epicenter of this coronavirus, have been traveling into Florida.
Now you can't do that anymore, yeah.
That's exactly right. And also what's been happening is people from the Miami, the southern Florida area, have been coming up to Palm Beach. So they're all that stuff at. Well, all of a sudden they start looking to different places. And who knows what's going to happen? Like, what's the wave of this coronavirus? Is it going to get to Texas and start to blossom? Is it going to get into who knows where? I mean, California, I can't fathom all of this stuff. What I will say to you, and I know you're looking for some sort of definitive answer, is, and it's a terrible answer, but we just don't really understand the effects that this thing is going to have. And what if there's a second wave?
Well, then everything is done. Then everything is. That's why that can't happen, and that's why we can't open too early, and that's why testing still has to be done. We're talking with Michael Bree because we can't have a second wave. Now they say it's going to come back anyway when it gets cold again, and by then hopefully we have some kind of vaccine or something that works. I mean, because it's gonna. If you listen to the guys who are the experts, they say it will definitely come. Fauci already said it's going to come back again. It's going to leave with the warm weather, and it's going to come back again. He already said that. You got to be prepared for that. But the question is, it's funny. You think of like baseball was talking today about what they're going to do, and they came up with a couple of definitive things. Like they won't come back until there's complete air travel in the country. They won't come back until there's no limit on social gathering because they don't want to play in front of no fans. Stuff like that. They will play their World Series in November. They've already agreed to that with the players. So they will start to make some stipulations. They expect to back up. They don't expect to play 162 games. So we already see some things with them. The question I was wondering was, with courses now closed, now I don't know if they're closed for professional golfers or not. Do you think the professional golfer is getting out and getting a chance to play, or do you think he's shut down completely right now?
Well, I think there's a lot of different things, and I think it depends on the city, the state that you live in, right? Because there's, let's just say you take New York or you take Florida, which in Palm Beach County now they've closed those courses.
A lot of them live in the Orlando area. A lot of them.
100%. Right. And so if all of a sudden you have that, which you're talking about a destination for people to take trips, the idea that Orlando would be a place that they would open up golf courses again, if that starts to get hit, you have to first start with what is the county, what is the state, what is the city going to allow to have happen? They have the authority over all these sporting events. And so that's the first thing. And then from there, then you start to get in, okay, if they're going to allow it, then what can we do within the parameters that are established by these governing bodies? And what I can tell you is that I do think that the challenge that you have in the game of golf is, in large part, it's an older fan that you have. It's not,
right? No question.
Football,
yeah.
you have a younger fan, older fan. And so in the game of golf, and I think you're seeing this wisely out of the LPGA and certainly wisely out of the PGA Tour, they're trying to prevent people from coming to their events at this point. And so when you start to look at the chances of reopening that and then the spreading of that, here's the other question then. Are people going to risk it? Are they risk getting on a plane and going to Tennessee?
Not right away. Not right away. No,
Right.
I think it's going to be slow, and I that's why I think some of this stuff is going to be very slow to come back. I think also money's going to be an issue for a lot of people, and they're going to forego their summer vacation. They're going to forego some of the things they might have done, and that's why the extra money that goes to watch a golf tournament or go to watch a ball game, that the attendance might get hit this year. I mean, it's extra money that goes into this stuff. I mean, this is entertainment dollars. This isn't your dollars that you eat with. A lot of people are going to be hit in their savings. They're going to have spent a lot of money. So that's another big issue for this year. So what I also was wondering about is conditioning for the players. On baseball, for every week off, they need 2 days. That's what they tell me. For every week we're off, we need 2 days in training to get back, especially getting pitches lengthened out. And so the way you look at it is every week that's postponed, you need at least. So right now, Aaron Boone said yesterday we need 2 weeks. If it went another week, they need 2.5 weeks. They went 2 more weeks, they need 3 weeks. So every 2 weeks, they need another week to get ready. How about golfers? How much can that guy just wind it up and go back out and be ready to be sharp, or does he need X amount of time to get back out, or is he practicing in his backyard or he's got a practice area he can get to and at least he can hit balls? Or what do you think's going on with the average golfer?
Mike, that's a wonderful question. Here's what I would tell you. I think that you have the advance of the launch monitors and stimulus, and what you have for most of these players is they've got one or both.
So they got simulators on their grounds or in their house. They do. Well, heck, they should have one. We have one, so they should have one. I mean,
exactly.
That's right. So that makes sense. My wife has one. I don't. My wife uses it every day. So you're right. We have one, so they should have one. So most of them have stuff where they can at least go. And does that keep them sharp enough, or do you think that hurts that they're not on a course?
No, here's what I think. I think it will keep them sharp enough to be able to strike the ball and putt the ball. I think short game is where the issue is a little bit challenging. You can't really create the lies in the rough, the bunker shots. You can't really do that. But I will also tell you that depending upon where you are, you can get out and you can work on this. Some of these players even have places on their own property where they've got bunkers and greens and things like that. So I will tell you that I don't think it's like baseball. I don't think it's like football. I don't really think that it's that kind of thing. I think that it's slightly different because you really don't need another person. You start thinking about baseball, you start thinking about live pitching, you start thinking about all the circumstances and situations. That's really not happening in the game of golf. So I do believe that when the tour starts up again, that these players will be ready for it.
Okay, and so what about how much is this going to impact the guys who are outside America in your mind? Have you talked to any of the players around the world, and what are they viewing? Is it the same for them as it is for us from the guys you've talked to? Or have you not talked to any? Have you talked to any of them?
Yeah, so here's what I can tell you. What I can tell you is the people that are going to struggle with this the most are, quite frankly, that are not the upper echelon player. They're the one that's number 100 on the money list.
The guy who's trying to stay on the tour. He's trying to keep his card.
You bet. And they don't have all of the things that everybody else has. They just don't have that stuff available to them.
Plus,
And
the
I think what
satellite
ends up
tours get
happening,
crushed in this kind of situation. The satellite tours are
well,
the first things to go. Those things are in big trouble.
100%. But what I will also tell you is, as a result of this, what you have when a tournament takes place, and let's just again fast forward, you're moving into the fall season, which is what we're all going into. So think about this: the days are shorter, which means the fields are smaller, and when your field size are smaller, and the players that are the upper echelon players that haven't played certain events, like they might not have played the 3M, they might not have played Wyndham, they might, whatever it may be, as all this stuff gets pushed into there, the better players now going to start, the Dustin Johnsons, the Justin Thomas, they're going to start playing those events because they've missed all these other opportunities. And what ends up happening is the guy that's number 141 or number 131, who would typically get into that event, doesn't get into that event. So when they get the chance to play, they have to play great. The other thing is that the fields are better fields because you get better players. The long and short of it is that the pressure is going to go way, way up this year. And what you're going to see is the lower level player, that player that's sort of, say, 100 to 150, that player is going to play with a tremendous amount of pressure because they don't have a lot of events left, and the fields are going to get way more challenging.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. And, you have the guys at the top that you expect. I mean, Rory's been amazingly consistent, but for me, he hasn't won enough. And to me, his putt has still got to get to be more consistent. He's been in the top 5 almost every tournament, right? I mean, this year he's been at the top every tournament we had this year. He was in the top 5 almost every week. I mean, so which is very good and very consistent. But to me, he's just not winning enough like a great player should.
And you know what, Mike? You bring up another point. First of all, you're right. He's been in the top 5 in every single event, and he's been right there. The Sunday scoring has been upon occasion for him. He is, we all know this, he has a mesmerizing golf swing. He is the kind of guy that you can go and you can stand on the range and watch him hit balls, and you literally are floored at the ability level and the speed and the effortlessness and all these different things. But when you start to examine where he is in the putting space, you start to really question, is he going to be where is he going to be when it's time to perform? And I'll give you some statistics.
Go ahead.
He's 6th on tour in putts per round in the first round. He's 149th in round 4.
Wow.
He is.
That's mental. That makes it mental.
Well, and that's exactly right. And what happens with Rory is in those first 5 or 6 holes, if he misses a short putt in that period of time, it's almost like he goes off. I don't want to say he goes off the deep end, but it seems like he struggles. Now, look, this is a guy who we all know is a fantastic talent. There's no question about it. And he's won already at HSBC Champions World Golf Championship event at the end of the calendar year in 19. But when you start looking at where he was after the first round at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, or where he was in the World Golf Championships Mexico Championship, or the Genesis Invitational, where he has the lead and he shoots 73 in the final round, you start to wonder what's going on. And he has history. You and I have talked about this a lot. We question whether he's going to be able to make the big putt when he needs it. And if he's streaky, when he gets when he makes that putt in those first 5, 6 holes, now all of a sudden he's fine. But he misses that early one, and the next thing you know, it's like he starts to doubt. I think he's very fragile with the putter in his hands. Brad Faxon has done a wonderful job with him, but at the same time, I don't think that they have completely jumped the hurdle just yet.
Talking about Michael Breed, 2 other guys. Rahm is ready to win, but Rahm's doing the same thing. He can't close the door. He'll go out and shoot 61 on Saturday, but won't win it on Sunday. Rahm and Fleetwood both just cannot close the door here, and they both have to prove they can. I mean, and Rahm's younger, and we all know Fleetwood's going to be really good. Rahm could be great. We know that, okay? And Fleetwood's really good, but Fleetwood's got to prove he can play on Sunday around here, and Rahm too. And Rahm just seems to have that one moment in every tournament where something goes bad. He'll overcome that, but both of them still have work to do mentally.
Well, here's what I would say. Jon Rahm is one of those players who I and I said this early on my radio show, I expect Jon Rahm to be number one in the world by the time the year is over. That's what I believe. And I believe that Jon Rahm has the ability. He certainly has the drive. This is something that in my mind, Jon Rahm and Tommy Fleetwood are in two different spaces. Fleetwood's just trying to pick up a win on the PGA Tour. Jon Rahm is trying to become the number one player in the world.
I totally agree.
And Jon Rahm, let's not forget, Jon Rahm won 4 times in the end of 2019, 1 time here in the U.S., 3 worldwide. And you look at his ability level, he's got it all. I would say there are few players on the PGA Tour that drive it as consistently as Jon Rahm. And I said this to you last year. Jon Rahm hit a shot at the Players' Championship a year ago on the 11th hole that matured the player. I think Jon Rahm is a more mature player this year than he was last year. And I will tell you some other things about Rahm as he looks at this. Imagine this. He and his coach, and he's got a few, he and his coach, Dave Phillips, have a complete physical examination every single Monday, every single week, much like a race car. He's the only guy on tour that I know who's going through that protocol right now. And he is as fit as you can be. He knows exactly what's going on with his body, where things might break down, and all of that stuff is taken care of every single week. You talk about to be the best in the world, you have to do some things differently than everybody else. There's nobody that I know of that's doing what Jon Rahm is doing. And I look at Jon Rahm and I go, I don't see Jon Rahm as a guy that struggles with like the way Rory McIlroy struggles with closing. I look at Jon Rahm as a guy who has the ability to close. He shot 61-67 in the final 2 rounds of the World Golf Championships Mexico Championship. He finished tied 3rd, but he really played some good golf. And I think if he does anything, he makes it too aggressive. Where Rory McIlroy, to me, gets defensive when he is on a Sunday and struggling a little bit, and there's almost a doubt of, can I do it? Jon Rahm, to me, is the complete opposite. Now, Fleetwood is a guy that I think when he gets that first win, I think he's going to explode because he's going to know that he can do it on the PGA
Yeah,
Tour.
he can't play on Sunday yet. He falls apart on Sunday. He plays great until Sunday, and then he falls apart. I mean, he's got to get past it. It's still mental for him. You could just see it. He can just see his game changed on Sunday. He just is not ready to win on Sunday yet. It means too much to him. You can tell he can dominate, and then on Sunday he falls apart.
Well, you know what? I would say this. He seems to fall apart in the U.S. I'm not saying. Listen, I don't watch the tournaments in Europe, so I know he wins over there.
Yeah. I'm just talking about the American tournaments. He hasn't been able to close the door on these American tournaments yet.
He has put himself in a lot of positions. I mean, we think back to the Players' Championship last year, and he was leading literally after almost every single round. He shoots 65, 67, and then he shoots 70, and after the 3rd round, he's like 1 back, and then 73. And you are correct. I mean, he's got 78 in the PGA Championship last year. Now, that 78, it didn't really mean anything, except it meant a lot. And you start looking at his performance this year, and I'll tell you, he shoots fine scores. It's just he's not shooting scores when it means something.
I agree.
And when it really means something is when he has to perform.
No, what happens with him is if he is out of contention on Sunday, he goes out and shoots 63 and winds up finishing 4th. Well, that was no pressure, though. He couldn't win. So that's what you're getting when he goes out there and he's in front he goes out and shoots 78, okay, or 80. I mean, that it's there for him. It just has to change. I got one more guy for you, though, and this guy to me has arrived now, and I didn't know a thing about him, but I'll tell you, this Sungjae Im is there. That guy is going to be around a lot. I mean, that guy, he's the real thing. He is I had no idea where he came from, but all of a sudden he has exploded on the scene, and his game is rock solid. That guy is good.
Well, Sungjae Im is patient. He's a guy who isn't afraid of the situation. He's 21 years of age, and he's been professional. Believe it or not, he turned professional when he was something like 15 years old.
Is that true? Really?
Yeah, he's been around for a while. He just hasn't been a guy that you would go, wow, I expect Sungjae Im to be a world class player. Now, what I will tell you is that when you look at his resume, he was he's on the President's Cup team in 2019. So we go, okay, this guy can certainly play. And we've seen the President's Cup success of these players and how it has translated into success in 2020. But you look at this guy and you think to yourself, man, where did he come from? Well, you know where he came from? He came from great talent. He plays all the time. I mean, he plays all the time. And he is trying as best he can.
And he's not afraid. He can putt it. He'll make shots. He's not afraid. This guy's got ice in his veins. I mean, listen, I'm not saying he's as talented as Rory or as talented as Johnson or as talented as Rahm, but this guy's a solid, stone-solid player. And he hits, he hits good shots. He makes great putts. I mean, he is a very solid player.
He was the rookie of the year last year. He was the only rookie to get to the Tour Championship. He played 35 events, which nobody is playing 35 events. And this is a guy who is just by the sheer number of events he's playing, he's putting himself into positions to be successful. And the more times you play, the more times you put yourself into that spot where you've got a chance to win, the more times that you're gonna come through. And he got that first win, the PGA Tour win this year. He had a really good chance the week after that at the API, absent of a bad wedge shot that he hit on the 13th hole where he hit it into the water. He played phenomenal golf. And Sungjae Im is the guy who is, I think he's going to be extremely consistent. Like I said, he's only 21 years of age. So it's not like he's running home to this guy is playing every single event. His biggest worry is my laundry because I'm never home. I'm going from one place to the next. Literally, that's what he's got going on.
He is really good. I mean, he's consistent too. Listen to me. He's a fixture now. He is a fixture. You're going to see him all the time. Here's two guys. Which guy has a better year this year, and which one would you bet on for the next 10 years? This is a tough one. This is going to be a very tough question.
Okay.
Cantlay, DeChambeau.
Wow. So, okay, this is an interesting one.
And they're both good.
They're both really good. Here's what I would tell you. Patrick Cantlay's going through a little injury right now. But when I look at Bryson DeChambeau is a guy who he's more of an emotional guy.
The guys don't like him, right? I get the idea he's kind of it's almost like it's a Reed thing going on. It doesn't seem like he's very popular with the other players. Now, I don't know anything because I'm not around the players, but it just seems to me he's not very popular around the players.
Here's what I would say. Bryson is a guy who is well-liked. He's just a slow player, and people get frustrated with him. It's not. I don't think that it's quite like the Patrick Reed situation.
Gotcha.
But DeChambeau is a guy who is a very thorough thinker. And
right, he's an engineer. He has the club stuff and everything else. Yeah. He's a scientist.
That's exactly right, and he is going about trying to add distance to his game. He's rebuilt his body. His neck size is an inch bigger. His waist is 2 inches bigger. I mean, the guy has put on mass.
And he's become a very good player.
He's become a player, but he has added to his game, which is a thing that's a separator. What I worry about with all these players and with Bryson as well is injury. Now, when I look at Patrick Cantlay's golf motion, Patrick Cantlay is a guy who makes a swing that is, I don't want to call it an Ernie Els type swing because they're different bodies, but it's a very effortless motion and it's an unencumbered swing. And when I look at a Patrick Cantlay, I think he's got a greater upside potential. The game it's just an easier game. It's not a very deep thinking game like what Bryson DeChambeau plays. And my guess is that Patrick Cantlay, when it's all said and done, will have a career that will be a little bit better. And when I say that, I mean, look, I don't think you're going to see a double-digit major championship winner certainly in my lifetime. I don't think you're going to see another one again. But I do.
Yeah. Sure.
You think you're going to see somebody get to 10 majors?
Yep.
And Yeah, I just don't.
Brooks
I don't see
Koepka.
that happening.
Brooks Koepka.
Well, here's the problem. See, the
He's
problem
got to stay
is,
healthy.
Mike,
If he's healthy,
injury.
yeah, the
That's right.
knee's a problem. But if he's healthy, the way he plays in the majors, Koepka is going to be the only guy. Koepka is going to dominate major play. He's better than everybody else, but he doesn't care about the other tournaments, which I know annoys everybody, and it especially annoys the PGA. But tough luck. He's doing what Jack did. He's doing what Tiger did. Everything's about the majors. It's not about anything else, and he really doesn't care about anything else. I mean, he admits he tunes up. I saw him in one of the tournaments this year. They interviewed him, and he said, "Hey, I'm out here tuning up." I mean, basically, it's what he said. I mean, he didn't even fool around like he was trying to win. I'm out here tuning up. I'm getting ready. So, I mean, I think he has become so dominant in the majors. I would bet on him to win double digits.
So if there's anybody you think it's Brooks Koepka, I would tell you this. I just
and you were the guy who was the first guy to ever talk about Brooks Koepka.
Understand? I'm with you on that. I told you that Koepka's a guy you got to look out for. Koepka.
Hey, you were the first guy ever to mention Koepka. You told me Koepka was going to be a great player. 2 years before you merged, you talked about Koepka on my show and said he was going to be a great player. Before anybody ever mentioned Koepka, you did. And
I think he's a guy who can be a great player. But what I worry about with him, and what I worry about, see, the golf swing now is much more violent than it's ever been. They are. This is an engine that is revving to the highest possible RPM.
And why are they doing that? They don't need to hit it that far. Why are they doing it? What difference does it make if they hit it another 10 yards?
Here's the thing, Mike. The game of golf it's an 80-20 game. All you have to do is play really, really well in 20% of your events. And for Koepka, the 20% of his events that he wants to play well in are the major championships.
Correct.
And you go out there and you hit it as far as you can. You have the least club that you have coming into a green,
right.
And that's the way they play, and they're conditioned to play that way. You know, when I was playing the game,
and he
David
does
Love
it, and he hits it straight too, which is, you can count on him just like you can Dustin Johnson. The difference is he'll make a putt and Dustin Johnson won't. That's the difference.
And see, I look at all these guys, and I think that they're going to be very, very streaky. That's what I think. I think we saw this with Jordan Spieth. He had 2-3 great years, and he created a Hall of Fame career in 3 years. Koepka's done the exact same thing, but I think they're going to be streaky, and I think that you're going to see another person come along, and they're going to have a good 2-3 years, and then another person come along and have a good 2 or 3 years. But I don't think you're going to see players that are going to be like a Dustin Johnson who's going to win every single year for 12, 13, 14 years. I think
Koepka will win a major this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he won 2. I think he'll win 1. Now, he's won 4 in the last 3 years. And he's 4 in the last 3 years. And how many times has he finished second? Twice or 3 times? At least twice, right?
Yeah. So, but here's the other thing, Mike, that's the curveball to this. Do we honestly, like today, looking at the watch, it's the 27th of March, do we really believe that all these majors are going to be played this year?
I think all the majors will be played. I believe the only one I don't know about is I don't know how the British Open is going to. I think it's easy for them to play the PGA. I think that's easy. Even if they play it in November, I think that's easy. I think the Masters will be played I think it'll be played over Labor Day weekend because the Masters is king, and I think they'll get the number 1 slot, which I think will be Labor Day weekend. That's when I think the Masters will be played. That's just my prediction. I don't know when the U.S. Open will be played, but I think that will be the first one played, and I don't know where to slot in the British. I don't know where to slot the British in. I think those 4 will be played. And I agree with you. I think everything else will have to take a back seat to that. You're right, no Olympics, which helps, so that's out. And they got next year for the Olympics. And I think, if you asked me right now, I would say all 4 majors would be played. The only one that would worry me is I could see a lot of guys skipping the British this year if it's all jammed up and not making the trip. I could just see that happening.
Yeah. So I mean, if you start to look at all this, and you
But a
look
guy
at,
like Koepka, or the big guys are going to play in any major because they want to win the major. So they're going to show up for the major. The big guys who the guys that don't think they can win, they might not show up. But the big guys, the top 20 players, are all going to show up at the British Open. You know they are.
yeah. So I mean, the point is that you start thinking about how sandwiched this schedule is going to be, and what's going
Yep.
on with other players, and how are they recovering, and what have they been doing in the off season? Because it's easy to fall into bad habits. And if you're a Brooks Koepka and you have this mindset of the PGA Tour doesn't really kind of, I'm not really into the PGA Tour. I'm just playing it because I want to get ready for major championships. But don't forget, he went and saw Butch Harmon for a little bit. Like, things were not so good. He had to go see Butch Harmon for a little bit. Now, as I look at all of the things that are going on, here's what I would say. I would say I have it's a tough sell for me to believe that we're going to see all majors played. I honestly think we're going to see 2, maybe 3 majors played. It would not surprise me at all if the Open Championship was postponed or even canceled. That would not surprise me at all. And it wouldn't
The
shock
U.S.
me,
Open or the British Open?
the British Open.
Okay.
It wouldn't shock if the PGA Championship was canceled, because I do think that you're sitting here and you're looking at how you're going to slot all these things in here. To your point about the Masters, they can play that thing in October and everything's fine. You're talking about San Francisco. When are you going to play out there in San Francisco? And are you going to be in the battle of what's the window that we get? Who's going to get the choice of the window first, the USGA or the PGA Championship? I'm going to say the U.S. Open gets first choice.
Right,
And
I
now
agree.
all of a sudden, particularly with the U.S. Open being in New York, you can't really reliably play and say past October 10th. And then you start thinking about how when the sun goes down, how many players can play in this? I mean, there's so many different things, but the point is now, what are you going to go back out to San Francisco in November? You're going to go out there. I don't see that happening. I just don't see it happening. And so for me, I'm looking at this with kind of I don't know that these major championships are all going to take place. I think the Masters is going to take place, and I think the U.S. Open is going to take place. And if there were only 2 majors, that wouldn't surprise me.
Well, listen, good to talk to you. Be safe.
As always.
Take care of your family. We'll talk to you soon.
You too. Thanks.
All right,
God
Mike
bless.
Breed.